and welcome to my video. It feels good to be back. I've been poorly for the last week or so and I just haven't had the energy to film anything or upload, but I have an exciting video today. I did a small book haul of Caribbean literature, but before I get into that I wanted to talk a little bit about book hauls because I have kind of mixed feelings about them on BookTube. I love watching them. I find them really entertaining to watch and I get why people really enjoy them. But I remember before I started this channel that I felt like maybe I wouldn't be able to do it because of things like that, because of some of the cultures on BookTube, like book hauls and things, people buying these beautiful editions of books and buying hundreds of books at once or 50 books or whatever, and it's something that I like. It's a bit out of my remit and I felt like if I wanted to do this, maybe I would have to do that, or maybe I wouldn't fit in if I didn't do it. But I've kind of thought, well, screw that. I'm going to read what I want and do what I want. So maybe what I read might not be the most popular stuff or the most well-known stuff, but it's what I enjoy. So I want to do this anyway. I'm trying to curb my book buying habits because it's not sustainable. Which I think is something we all feel sometimes. But I did do a small book haul. I've got 9 books here. Oh, I got 10. I got 2 copies of one, but I'll explain later. I got 9 books here, all of which are secondhand apart from one. I do try to buy secondhand books, which I know some people really like their bookshelves to be very pretty and have lots of hardbacks or whatever, but I have this absolute love for secondhand books. I love books that are well read. The website I buy from, I always look for like the well-read copies because you can get like very good or acceptable or good copies, but I always go for well-read because I love seeing books that have been like well loved and by someone else, and I love seeing other people's annotations in books. I love seeing them battered and creased. I think they're just beautiful and it makes me just want to give them a new home when you see someone that's given up a book that they obviously loved or hopefully loved. So these books are kind of battered. I think they're more or less all well-read ones apart from a couple. But yeah, I decided to do a Caribbean literature haul, and because I really want to connect more to my Caribbean roots. I'm half Jamaican, so I really wanted to connect more with that side of me. And I read a lot of books by black authors and things, but I wanted to read more by Caribbean authors in particular. So I bought these 9 books, and one of my goals for 2021 is to read all of these and as much Caribbean literature as possible. Maybe I'll make like a Caribbean literature shelf at some point one day when I have like half decent bookshelves. But yeah, so I want to go through each of these books that I've hauled and maybe say a little bit about them. So let's go through the only brand new book that I bought because I could not find it secondhand anywhere, and that is Wages Paid, and it's by James Carnegie. This book was, when was it published? This book was published in 1976. Oh, this is a more modern copy, obviously. And James Carnegie is Jamaican. And this is a novella, and it's set on the sugar plantations in Jamaica. And I think it goes through the experiences of the slaves on the plantation, or the enslaved people on the plantation. One thing I didn't mention is that I'm going to go through, obviously, the books, but I'm also going to go through like the author's origin, so which part of the Caribbean they're from as well. It would be interesting if I can manage next year to read like a book from every island in the Caribbean. I think that would be kind of cool. But I'll see. We'll see how it goes. So that was Wages Paid. The next is I have on the list is a book that I bought 2 copies of, which is kind of going against what I said about book hauls, but they were both really cheap. One of them was only like £3. In fact, all the books on here I think were less than a tenner because they're all used. And that is Wide Saggrassa Sea by Jean Rhys. So this is the first copy I got of it. This was like the one that was £3. It's super, like, can you see it, well read and battered, like the pages are yellowed, and it has the previous owner's annotations in, for example here, in blue pen, and I absolutely love it. I love seeing the previous owners, what they've written, but it has all their annotations, and from what I've seen, from what I've flicked through, it seems like they've been comparing this book to the original story, because Ride to Grass Sea is a story taking one of the characters from Jane Eyre, who is, what's she called? Antoinette. And so if you don't know anything about Jane Eyre, which I haven't read, Antoinette was the wife of the main love interest, I think, who gets locked in a attic for like 10 years or something, because she's mad or whatever. And she's thought to be a Caribbean woman. So this book pays tribute to her, and this tells her story, whereas, you know, Jane Eyre is obviously a very white, classic story, and Antoinette doesn't really have a voice, and she's treated very poorly and seen as very poorly because she's the mad one. So this actually plays tribute to her and telling her story. So Jean Rhys has taken time to go through what it was like for Antoinette, and I'm very excited to read it. So the person's annotations in this book, like I mentioned before, are largely seem to be comparing it to Jane Eyre. But I'm interested to read more of this. Maybe this will encourage me to read it. I've never read that. I haven't read many classics like that, but this will be interesting. So I also bought a second copy of this because when I saw this copy, which I thought is a lovely cover and is like super well read, I also found this like really old edition, and I just thought it was stunning. Like, the cover is so pretty. It's like so worn and it's like so browned. And this was published in 1968. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Jean Rhys. So she is from Dominica, in the Caribbean. This was originally published in 1996, and this copy is from 1968. Whereas the other copy I have, where is that from? This one was printed in 2000. Printed in 2000. So this is like a much older copy, and it hasn't been annotated or anything, and it's still in fairly solid condition. Like, but I just love, look how orange, or if I can flick through, all the pages are. I think it's so, I love old books. So I don't know which one I will read or annotate. I do annotate when I read. I don't know whether to like add my annotations with this one for like this weird sort of time capsule thing of two people that have read it. Maybe I will, and then copy them into this one. I don't know. I might leave this one as it is, but I couldn't help myself. I don't usually buy 2 copies of books, but it's just so pretty, and I just had to. I have 2 books, I think. Is it 2? I've written them all down to make sure I don't forget anything. Yeah, I have 2 books by Jamaica Kincaid, so I'll go for the first one. The first one is A Small Place. So Jamaica Kincaid is an Antigua-American author. A Small Place was published in 1988. And what is it about? Okay, it's creative non-fiction, so it's in the form of a book. So it draws on lots of Jamaica Kincaid's personal experience. There's a picture of her on the back, actually, if you want to see. So it's like a non-fiction piece of work, but I think it's told as like kind of like a story as it goes through her experiences. There's even a photo in it. Ooh, I can't really see, it's a bit faded. But yeah, so talking about what it's like for her to grow up in the Caribbean, and it will be very interesting. The second book I got by Jamaica Kincaid is Lucy. So Lucy was published in 1990. It is a book about a woman called Lucy who moves to the US from the West Indies as an au pair for a rich white middle class family. So it's documenting, I guess, her experience. It's a fictional story about her experiences of that, and I'm excited to read it. I've read a lot of reviews about that. All the covers of these books are so pretty. Look at that. It's very, yeah. I'm excited. I don't have very much to say about these books because I haven't read them and I've done a little bit of research, but I feel like I'm not giving a very good lowdown on these books. But hey, what can you do? So the next book I have on the list is, The Lonely Londoners by Sam Savlon. Savlon? Is that like a antiseptic cream? Sam Salvon, not Savlon or whatever. He's on the back as well, if you can see him. So he is a Trinidadian author. It explores the story of poor working class black people, I think it's men, who move to London from the West Indies. I think, is it during Windrush? Yeah, I think it's about during Windrush. I think it's set in the 1940s or 1948 or something. So the people that moved to the UK because of Windrush as British citizens. So it's documenting their experiences. Did I say this was published in 1956? I might have said that already. It was published in 1956 if I didn't say it already. And This is also a used book, but it's in pristine copy, like, condition, sorry. Like, completely pristine. So that's the interesting one. This is one of, like, when I was looking just for some books by Caribbean authors, this one came up quite a lot. Because I think a few people have read this. I think it's very popular. Obviously, a few people have read this. But it should be interesting. I think a lot of these books are, like, either written by Caribbean American authors or, you know, people that still live or purely from the Caribbean. So it's nice to find a book that also has a bit of, like, Britain in it, set in, like, London, something more familiar to me because I'm not familiar with the US at all. So next on the list is A Bang by Michelle Cliff. So this isn't a plastic cover because it's an ex-library book that I got. Oh, you can see my note on it. That I got on the used book website. So I guess the library was done with it. It's from Nottingham City Council Library. And so A Bang is by Michelle Cliff, she's a Jamaican-American author. It was published in 1984. It's a semi-fiction autobiographical novel. So it's about a light-skinned, mixed heritage Jamaican girl. She grew up middle class in the 1950s, and it's just her story, I guess. I think it draws a lot on Michelle's own experiences being a middle class Jamaican woman. I think she's of mixed heritage as well. So that should be an interesting one. Oh, yes. I also got Breath, Eyes, Memory by Edwidge Danticat. I'm really conscious of not pronouncing names wrong. I do it all the time. Edwidge Danticat. She's also on the book, on the back. I also can't speak today. I can never speak. So she's a Haitian American author. So this story, I think this was popular. Something about, like, it being like Oprah's book club. If Oprah has a book club or something, I don't know. I know very little about Oprah. But yeah, so she's a Haitian American author. So this novel follows a girl called Sophie. And I think it's about her moving from Haiti to the US, and then finding that really difficult and that change of culture, and then she ends up moving back. And I think it's about her finding herself and finding an identity, and reconnecting with her heritage and finding a place. I think there's I think it's like, yeah, maybe coming of age kind of thing. Apparently it explores questions of race, linguistic and gender identity, so that should be quite interesting. Next, I have a book by Maurice Condé. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I recently read I, Tituba, Black Witch of Salem. So technically that counts towards my Caribbean literature reading experience that I'm hoping for. But so Maurice Condé is a Guadeloupean, I hope I said that right, Guadeloupean author. So Guadeloupe is an island in the Caribbean, but it's French owned, so everyone speaks French. So she's a French author essentially. And this is Windward Heights. So this is a black retelling of Wuthering Heights, another book I haven't read. I've actually printed off like a summary of it in here, stuck in the front, so that I can kind of get the connections between it. I have not read that book, but I'm definitely excited to read this one and to read a classic, but in a retold form with more representation that maybe I can identify with. I think that's one of the things I find difficult with classics, is that obviously a lot of them are set during, like, slavery and things, and I think it's often ignored in the story or not really mentioned or focused on in the story, even though, you know, black people and the enslaved people are human and have parts to play in these people's lives. So sometimes I find it hard to connect, knowing that that's in the background and it's not mentioned. I'm not saying the story has to be about that, or people have to be like, you know, if it's true to the time, the context of the story, then it's not going to. I'm not expecting some huge, like, you know, woke dialogue or characters. But I think it being so sort of ignored is what puts me off a little bit. But maybe reading this will encourage me to delve more into other classics. I mean, there's some things that I absolutely love, like The Picture of Dorian Gray. Absolutely love it. But other ones I've been put off as well, because they're the sort of things you read in school, and school just sucks the life out of all literature, doesn't it? So I'm really excited to read this one. I think Maurice Condé is a phenomenal writer. I loved I, Tituba. So I'm really, really, really excited to delve in this, and this is another pretty cover. I didn't say when it's published. So Maurice Condé, yes, Guadeloupean. This was published in 1995. This is probably one of the most recent books that I have, actually. And finally, I have Omerus by Derek Walcott. So Omerus means Homer. So Homer is the person, if you don't know, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. So the Greek epic poems that go through, Achilles and all that stuff, and the Trojan War. Which I love. I absolutely love Greek mythology. I love mythology in general, like Norse, and Egyptian mythology. It just has this like place in my heart that I love. I'm partway through reading the Iliad, but it's taken really long because I'm like annotating everything. But I don't know, I have this weird fascination with it. So I obviously had to pick up this book. And this is an epic poem as well. It's actually made up of, I think, 7 books, but they've all been collected into this one. And I guess it is sort of like a retelling of Homer's Iliad, but by Derek in a different way. I think it's maybe not a strict retelling, but it's like influenced by, so the characters maybe represent, Achilles. I think there's like a character called Achilles in it anyway. So if you're interested in Greek mythology, this might be like a fun alternative, which I don't think it doesn't focus on that as such, but it's interesting to see a book that's been inspired so much by such a well-known and epic piece of work. So about Derek is a St. Lucian author. This was published in 1990, and I love poetry and epic poems and things, so this should be fun to read. This will probably be a lot easier to read than the Iliad, which is obviously translated from like ancient Greek. So this will be really, really interesting, and I'm excited for it. So those are the books that I bought for this haul. There were so many more that I could buy, but I had to sort of pace myself, and I'm kind of making myself a rule to not buy new books until I've read the ones that I have, and only get books as gifts because I need to save money, and I don't want to end up having a huge pile of these books that I've never read. I want all the books that I have to be ones that I know. So I limited myself just to these 9, but technically 10 because of 2 copies. And 10 if you include I Teach You Book, which I'm going to include to this. And I'm really, really excited to read them all. It's going to be really good. And it feels nice to be doing something that makes me feel more connected to maybe a side of myself that I don't indulge that often, living in the UK and being British myself. So it's exciting to engage with this side of me as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was fun to go through it, actually. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.